Jamie McIntyre here on behalf of the Australian National Review.com. Just wanted to do a quick update. Mainstream media has a few issues with some of the things I had to say. Courier Mail called me a failed property spruiker, conspiracy theorist, maybe they could try and shorten that. So the immediate attacks, attacking the person and not playing ball. Why is mainstream media so threatened? Because I founded in 2013 the Australian National Review, and also at the same time founded the political party trying to create positive political change for this country. If you're not aware of my story of being an educator for 20 years, I'm very passionate. I wrote a book, 101 Ways to Improve Australia. I've wrote a dozen books, including What I Didn't Learn at School But Wish I Had. And not to impress you, but impress upon you, I'm someone that deeply cares about my country and deeply cares about humanity and deeply cares about the world being a fair and just place. I detest, though, people that lie, people that bullshit, and traitors to our nation. So you can see I have a few issues with mainstream media because they just feed the Australian people conspiracy theories every day. They're training people to be conspiracy theorists, expected to believe every 6 p.m. go and watch Channel 7 News or Channel 9 News or CNN and not question, not ask for any evidence of the bullshit about the coronavirus. They feed them, or bullshit about climate change and all the other stuff they're trying to lie to people about. Well, I had enough of that many years ago, so I founded a not-for-profit news site. Go check it out, AustralianNationalReview.com, independent news that tells it how it is. Don't answer to any masters, don't answer to any puppets like a George Soros, So some of them have a few issues. They try and make out that anyone provides an alternative narrative somehow as a conspiracy theorist. But to be a conspiracy theorist, you have to be able to not ask questions, demand evidence, and just believe any bullshit you're told by mainstream media, which means you're the dumbest of the dumb. Unfortunately, I don't qualify for that because I demand evidence and ask questions and do a detailed amount of research like many of my followers do. Also, mainstream media don't like me because I can post a video that will be done in 10 minutes or 20 minutes and I get more viewers watching that than their 10,000 work staff that try and drive traffic to watch the boring Channel 9 fucking news in this country. So people are leaving mainstream media in droves and they should be worried. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is the fact that when I launched Australian National Review and a political party, it was interesting. I didn't believe in the deep state. I didn't believe in these conspiracy theories that claim about a deep state, people operating in the shadows and how they will never allow things to change for the better. Well, I soon found out about that. Interesting thing, ever since I launched those two things, I was targeted by Fairfax Media, left-wing, nutcase, fake news media, Fairfax, in a concerted campaign to plant fake stories for years and working with deep state people in the government agencies such as the ASIC, who then targeted my companies to try and destroy my funding for funding independent media in this country to try and make a positive change, and funding I was putting behind a political party, 21st Century Australia, where I ran against Barnaby Joyce back in 2013, to try and create, because I believed in 10 years we're going to need a new political system. 21st century was all about a modern day political system because our current system is outdated and broken. You'd have to agree with that now. And I knew a trend that independent media was a must to protect our democratic country, democratic rights, because these people behind mainstream media that own most mainstream media in the world is owned by 6 corporations, and 5 of them are predominantly not conservative, but predominantly left or far left wing, and have an agenda such as George Soros brought into Channel 9 last year. If you're not aware, who billionaire George Soros was buddies with Bill Gates' dad and is buddies with Bill Gates. And if you want to know what's going on behind the coronavirus, check out George Soros and Bill Gates and what they're up to and what they've been up to for many years. And you'll start to see that the virus, yes, the virus might be real, but the pandemic is falsified, is fake, and it's a politicized virus. No one can argue with me it's a politicized virus, because it is, folks. So I was heavily targeted. I had assets stolen off me. I lost $20-30 million. My investors were targeted. Some of my investors lost about $5.6 million. Of course, ASIC and the deep state did this, and dodgy mainstream media, to then try and frame me because they needed to character assassinate me. I'm sure they'd like to also assassinate me, but they wanted to character assassinate me. Why? Because I had a large following, 500,000 people I'd educated, and being an articulate speaker, unlike most politicians that can't speak for shit or have no conviction in what they're saying, is that I was a threat to the two-party system, a threat to those who control our political system, and especially an independent media that was outing some of the corruption in the government. I warned about the corruption and infiltration, particularly one side of politics. And in 2015, I was invited to a Senate hearing where I had a running stoush and nearly had a punch on with dodgy conman Senator Sam Dastyari. Remember Sam Dastyari, Labor Party Senator, who was caught out. He said, Jamie, why don't you write about me in your little newsletter, referring to Australian National Review, which was getting up to 1 million readers a month then, more than the Australian Financial Review was getting online, and they have 300 staff, and we're a not-for-profit run on a tight shoestring budget. And we did write about, here's what we did write about Sam Dastyari, and we wrote about how he was receiving bribes and money into his bank account from the Chinese Communist Party, and he was pushing Chinese communist ideology and political agendas in Australia, while at the same time as taking taxpayers' money from the Australian government, meant to be Australian taxpayers meant to be representing Australians. And he's just the tip of the iceberg, folks. Our political parties are infiltrated, particularly on one side of politics more than the other, but both sides are guilty. The Chinese communists are playing hardball and infiltrating our politicians and our deep state, as are other foreign players. If you don't believe that, we'll go and do some research. So let me up to the point. So I had tens of millions of dollars in assets taken from me. I was framed for somehow losing investors' money. I didn't lose investors 1 cent of money. It's total conspiracy, bullshit, targeting. Why did they want to silence me so much? Well, I can tell you I won't be silenced. And so Ben Fordham, some of you might know Ben Fordham. He's a radio personality. Had a go at me today, apparently. I just saw the footage of the radio broadcast and sent through, and I'll post it with you so you can listen to what he has to say. But I would think Ben Fordham accusing me of being a lunatic because I simply said, amongst many things I said Dan Andrews should flee the Victoria because once all this farce is over, he's not going to be safe to ever think he can live in Victoria again. Because I know the Victorian people, they are getting fed up. I used to live in Melbourne up until a few years ago for like 15 years. Many of my friends are in Melbourne, and I speak to many people like all around this country. I mean, I get phone calls, and I've got to say, I'm pretty concerned when I get phone calls from elderly people around this country that have seen my phone numbers posted on my fan page on Facebook. Please and begging me, Australians from all walks of life, but particularly elderly, asking and begging me, and I apologise I can't get back to everyone, to try and help save this country. When elderly know that it's not about a virus, they're not concerned about a virus, folks. They're concerned about a loss of democracy and the communist takeover of our police fascist state in Victoria and the global agenda behind this with Gates and then what they're pushing. That's what they're concerned about. Elderly aren't even worried about a virus because they know it's largely falsified, and we already know only 9% of those listed as COVID deaths in Australia actually died of COVID, only 6% in America, and 12% in Italy, which is now being downgraded to 1.2%. I warned about this months ago, and so any media personality who wants to have a go at me or politician, why didn't you have the balls to take up the $1 million challenge, Ben Fordham, show some proof that the COVID deaths in Australia aren't inflated? Well, no one would take it up because they're too gutless and they know they are inflated. Why don't you speak about that? Because I'm willing to speak about that. So apparently Ben Fordham is saying that, Dan Andrews isn't a lunatic. He's accusing me of being the lunatic because I simply said he should flee. Why it's safe to do so? Because I know the Victorian people, they are almost up to it. They've almost hit a threshold, weeks away from just losing their shit. And Dan Andrews thinks he's going to be safe in Victoria. Do you think he can flee to Queensland or anywhere? He's not going to be safe anywhere in this country. Dan Andrews deserves to go to jail. He's a traitor. He's a dictator. He's a liar. He's a fraud. And that's where him and his oppressive policemen in Victoria should go as well. So Ben Fordham, I ask you, whose side are you on? You're on the side of the Australian people, or are you on Dan Andrews' side? Because I didn't incite violence. Dan Andrews did, though. Dan Andrews has incited violence. Is that true? Why would Victorian police, why at the same time they were refusing gun permits back in April, was Dan Andrews on his Facebook post saying that the Victorian police were getting armed with semi-assault, high-powered weapons? Why? Answer me that, Ben Fordham. Why were the police at the protest on Saturday just gone fully armoured with assault weapons and threatening violence and being violent? Why are they arresting grandmothers in the park? Why are they arresting pregnant mums in their house? So I haven't incited violence, Ben Fordham, but we all know, Victorians know this, and let's ask Australians, Victorians, who's inciting the violence? Dan Andrews and the Victorian police officers. I was the one that told people, and as I do have a large influence and large following now from people because I speak the goddamn truth, Ben, and maybe you should speak the truth, or maybe all those people out there, I would say to people, no longer support mainstream media. They are traitors to our country. They can't speak the truth. They're feeding you full of conspiracy theories every day that we should be shut down because of this virus. We know the virus is bullshit. Yes, the virus might be real. We know that because it has a patent number. It was made in a lab, but we know the pandemic is false. How do we know that? We already know only 9% of deaths in Australia are COVID. So that $1 million challenge I put up, people can't win now. Why? Because it's already been proven that I was right, they were wrong. And there's plenty of people like me that are right. So I would say to Australians, what can you do apart from standing up to mainstream media and Dictator Dan is this. Contact all the advertisers for Ben Fordham's Radio, 2GB, and any Channel 9, Channel 7. Contact them and say, we refuse to use your products wherever you advertise on mainstream media, because mainstream media is traitors to this country. They are liars, and we do not support your product. We want you to support independent media, people that are speaking the truth. So that's what you can do, fellow Australians. If you want to make a difference, that's one thing you can do. As a consumer, you have power. So go contact the advertisers and simply say, you advertise in mainstream media. I'm sorry, we will not support your product because mainstream media is selling conspiracy theories and they're lying. We want you to support independent media. And if you don't support independent media, we'll no longer support your product. So you do actually have power. So Ben Fordham, I used to think you're a pretty decent guy, but you might want to get your facts straight about me. And if you want to challenge me, take up that $1 million challenge. But I know you don't have the balls to do that, even though you're a highly paid radio personality working for mainstream media. How about you start speaking the truth? Dan Andrews is a lunatic. Dan Andrews is the person inciting violence in Victoria. And Dan Andrews is in charge of the police force, which is inciting violence in Victoria. I was one of the people that said people do not protest in the Freedom Day rallies in Victoria. Delay it. Because I know how violent the police force is and how Dan Andrews is wanting violence so he can crack down even harder. It's a police surveillance fascist state. If you disagree with that, well, please take up the challenge. I'll debate you anytime, Ben Fordham, on the facts about the coronavirus. If you're still peddling this pandemic is real, then you what good are you to the Australian people? So I ask you, Ben Fordham, are you with the Australian people or are you with Dan Andrews? We have every reason to play Dan Andrews because he's a muppet, he's a moron, he's a traitor, he is a dictator, and he's not answering to the parliament, he's not answering to the Victorian people, he's not answering to the federal government Prime Minister Scott Morrison. You want to know who he's answering to? He's answering to Brett Sutton, the Victorian Health Minister. And who is Brett Sutton, the Victorian Health Minister, answering to? Why don't you go and figure that out, Ben Fordham, and report on some accurate news? And I can tell you now, we know Billy Boy Gates. Why wasn't that disclosed? Why isn't that disclosed, Ben? There's a story for you. How come Brett Sutton didn't disclose funding from Bill Gates? I wonder. Oh, that's just a conspiracy. No, it's not. There's plenty of evidence. So Ben Fordham, get your facts right. I'm sure you're a decent guy. Your old man was a very good man. I did meet him once. So I'm not going to go too hard on you. I know generally you're probably trying to do your best, but, target the people that are inciting violence. That's Dan Andrews and the Victorian police and the people that are causing the problems in Victoria. It's not a virus that's causing the problems in Victoria. That virus can't kill anyone unless you're already sick and dying in aged care home. And even then, they're not dying mostly of COVID. Only 9% are. The rest are inflated. How bad can it be when you have to falsify deaths to scam people to lock them into their home? Victorians are fed up, Dan. As Dan Andrews would know, and Ben, you should know this. Victorians are fed up. I speak a lot to my friends. I'm contacted daily around the country. I'm trying to help fellow Australians and make a difference. And I warned, and it was not a threat to Dan Andrews. I was just commentating very clearly that he should flee because it's not going to be safe for him to remain in Victoria or in Australia when this is all over, because I know people are fed up with what he's done to their life and he can't expect to remain in Australia. He's un-Australian and it's not safe. It simply isn't, because people have every reason to take out their anger on him because it's his policies. He's the one that's doing this. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to follow the health minister's so-called falsified Bill Gates advice, he could do much better job. There's no need for these lockdowns. They're excessive, unnecessary, it's communistic, and it's nothing about a virus, it's about other agendas. And why are those police force armed with semi-assault high-powered weapons? And why are they training regional police in Victoria right now as we speak, Ben Fordham, how to train, fire, how to utilize machine guns? What, against terrorists? We don't have terrorists. We have innocent, peaceful protesters that have every right to protest. So, who's the lunatic, Ben Fordham? I'm going to suggest to you got this wrong. You're welcome to apologise anytime. Dan Andrews is a lunatic, and yes, it's not safe for him to be in Victoria for much longer. That's not a threat from me. That's just commentary, knowing how the Australian people feel.